There's a lot of trauma inside of men. Men have been traumatized through loneliness, through isolation. We're not allowed to turn to friends for our most important emotional support the way women can.
A lot of times we know what's holding us back in life. We just don't want to let go of that thing for whatever reason.
When someone says something can't be done, I say it's possible if you know the magic. So in order to get people's attention, you have to know how to use the power of suggestion to get their unconscious mind to pay you attention.
At the end of the day, when I have done my interviews for the day and I have one or two small nuggets of knowledge that I can pack away in my brain to improve myself 1%, then I've had an amazing, successful day. Welcome back to the A-Lister Show, where we bring you movers and shakers, hustlers, entrepreneurs, people doing interesting things. And today's guest, I already know it's going to be an interesting one. I've met this guy for about 60 seconds, and I can tell you right now, hang on the seat of your pants. This is going to get weird.
Or panties.
Whatever you got on, hang on to it, okay? All right. So this is Ross Jeffries. I'm going to start off by asking Ross, who the fuck are you?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Who the fuck is Ross Jeffries? Is he an urban myth, a living legend? Is he the world's greatest seducer, a healer, a heel, a hero, a villain, something in between, a whisper in the wind of your wildest fantasies, ladies? It's not an easy question to answer, Alistair. We're going to have to explore that. But essentially, Ross Jeffries is the alter ego, the other identity of Paul Ross, which is my birth name. Now, Ross Jeffries, for those of you who don't know, and I love looking into the camera even though I shouldn't, Ross Jeffries is the whole creator, the original godfather of the pickup community. All these other people who are teaching men to get laid, to pick up, they're my great, great bastard stepchildren. I started this whole thing back in 1988 because as a college student, I could not get laid in a woman's prison with a fistful of pardons. And when I discovered NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, I thought to myself, there's got to be a way to use this powerful hypnotic technology to, first of all, get rid of my own shame. Because all the joking and crude language I'm going to be using today, there's something that's not funny, which is there's a lot of trauma inside of men. Men have been traumatized through loneliness, through isolation. We're not allowed to turn to friends for our most important emotional support the way women can. I'll give you an example. A woman breaks up with the man she thought was the love of her life. Within an hour, her best girlfriends are on the phone or taking her out for chocolate ice cream and crying about what bastards men are.
That man ain't shit.
Yeah, that man ain't shit. A man breaks up with his girlfriend. He probably cries and by himself and mopes, and his buddies probably say, oh, get over it. Don't be a pussy. So men have a lot of trauma. They're traumatized by what they're taught attracts women, which doesn't work for the most part. They're traumatized by a society that essentially says if you're a man, you're toxic and a criminal until you prove yourself innocent. They're traumatized often by fathers who didn't demonstrate to them what it means to be an authority rather than a tyrant. So my job is both to harangue and to heal, to provoke and to get guys to change rapidly and exponentially. I'm not one for tiny little bits of change, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. So I am a very skilled hypnotist. I'm a healer. I'm a champion bullshitter. I am an entrepreneur, a marketeer. By the way, can I show just do one?
It looks like you spilled some coffee on your shirt, but what is that?
No. So this, if you want to try out my AI and get laid, it answers just like I do. So have a look at this. Just scan the QR code for your free 7-day trial of my AI.
What does your AI do? We're going to drop a link in the description too, but what does your AI do?
The AI essentially answers just the way I would. So it's like having me 24/7 as your tour guide to moist pink heaven.
So I can have Ross in my pocket.
Whatever.
It's a little too close to my balls, but
well, hey, okay. You want to go there? You're already going there? I'll match you, young man, whippersnapper. I've been at this much longer than you have. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really good. You can we have an instant cancel guarantee. Try it for 7 days. And
That means you instantly get canceled if you use it.
no.
No? What does it mean?
No, it means you can cancel within 7 days. Just
Okay.
hit the button and you're canceled.
Easy. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So I can have, if I want Ross's advice, all I got to do is tap a button and all of a sudden I have Ross in my ear.
Well, not necessarily in your ear, but right out in front of you, printing it. Now, we're working on the technology to have a virtual video of me answer exactly the way the AI wants to answer. And it works in Spanish, too. One of the members of my community speaks Spanish. He's from Uruguay. And he asked the AI, Paraguay. And he asked the AI to translate one of my seduction patterns. It did it perfectly. I got on the text chat with my technical team and said, how the fuck did you program it to do that? And they said, we didn't. We don't know how it's doing it.
So the AI is starting to take over. And
the AI is smarter than I am, and that's good. If you want, because I'm a compassionate guy, but I've been doing this since my first seminar was 1992. So that's, you do the math. I'm tired today, 34 years.
Yeah, that'd be 32 years because I'm 36.
Okay. So 32 years of answering the same questions. I really got tired. And so the AI takes over and does it for me. Unless you want to throw $50K at me for a weekend, then we can talk. But I'm moving on to sales and other stuff.
Okay. Well, what makes you the authority in the authority panty dropper here? The authority panty dropper.
Well, I don't know if I'm the authority. I'm sure there's some men who are better, at least at my age. There are younger men who could probably get more panties dropping if they applied my material. So if I was going up against someone who has mastery level with my material, they'd probably get more panties dropping, but I don't know. So what makes me the authority? What makes me the master? Well, I understand how language creates states of emotion in women. Too many guys are focused on behavior. How do I get this woman to give me her number? A stupid question. How do I get this woman to come back to my place? How do I get her to do anal? Whatever it is. And as a trained hypnotist, I draw my techniques and my methodology from a elite medical doctor named Milton H. Erickson. Now, Erickson had a different style of hypnosis. So I train my students to think, instead of thinking, how can I get her number? Think, what emotional states do you want her in? How quickly can I create a state of being focused, of being curious, of feeling desire towards me? How do I do that? How do I do it with my language? What is the methodology for me to create this?
What do you think one of the most powerful states to induce would be?
First of all, it's focus. The currency of any kind of influence, persuasion, sales, seduction is focus. Because once you stop and get that person focused, and as you look at me right now, I'm not sure all the ways you may begin to feel a growing sense that something's happening on the inside. But as that's taking place, it really is interesting, isn't it? So we want a state of focus. If the woman can't focus on you, now I don't know where my smartphone is. It's down here somewhere. I don't want to dig for it. But people in general, whether it's sales, seduction, any kind of influence, persuasion, healing, they can't focus the way they used to. When I was your age, we didn't have cell phones. Oh, we did have a cell phone. It was called the brick. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Bag phones, yeah.
It was like this huge, it looked like a brick. You had to pull the top cover open and pull up the antenna. Yeah. You needed to have pretty big hands to use that thing. So we didn't have smartphones, but now you have a smartphone, which is actually a dumbed down device because it distracts you. And it encourages narcissism and ADHD. The entire culture is now orbiting around the dark stars of ADHD and narcissism. And I'd add a third star, instant gratification. So in order to get people's attention, you have to know how to use the power of suggestion to get their unconscious mind to pay you attention. Because here's the thing to understand. I don't care whether you're trying to sell your cock or you're trying to sell a house. You're never selling your product or service. You're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. And decisions are made from emotions, and emotions are generated from the unconscious mind, not from conscious perceptions. We know this to be true.
Are you hypnotizing me right now?
How would you know if I was?
Well, you'd be.
How would you know?
I guess I would. I don't know.
That's right. But
If you're doing a good job, I guess.
Huh?
I said if you're doing it properly, I guess maybe I wouldn't know. I don't know.
Well, first of all, I would only do it in such a way that even though you can begin to feel my words are affecting you in a much different manner, that little voice on the inside that says, wait a minute, is he fucking with me? Is this working? Allows you to laugh and smile right prior to you thinking, oh, something is happening, isn't it? True?
True.
Okay, so if you think of hypnosis as you're going to sleep and your eyes are closed and your head goes down like this and I make you bark like a duck or quack like a chicken or whatever it is, that's not what we're talking about. My message to you is there's no such thing as hypnosis and everything is hypnosis, meaning any kind of powerful human communication has to activate the unconscious mind and get unconscious responses. And so therefore, any kind of communication that does that is hypnotic. I love the fact that people have this false image in their mind that in order to be in trance with me, they have to have their eyes closed and slumped over because that makes them susceptible. I can fly under the radar. Flying under the radar, to use a metaphor, whether it's sales or whether it's seduction or even as a healer, I sort of have to seduce their unconscious mind to make shifts and changes. The ability to influence people invisibly, undetectably, and irresistibly, you can coin a lot of money doing that.
How has it been beneficial for you in your life?
Well, it's been beneficial for me, of course, obviously earning a tidy living. And more importantly, one of my highest values is I'm service-minded and I'm impact-driven. I have impacted so many lives. I have students email me to this day with pictures of their family and saying, thank you, you saved my life. I have a family because of you. So speaking to you as someone who's very purpose-driven and impact-minded, it's really helped me live on purpose, to know that I am here for a reason. I'm not just here to make coin or to pump semen or actually I've been fixed, so my semen has no swimmers. Detail for you ladies, I know this is making you drool between your legs. Now, if I didn't have you before, now you know I got you. I'm shooting blanks.
What does it mean to be purpose-driven? What does that mean?
It means that you know what impact you want to have on the world. You say to yourself at the end of the day, when they click out my lights, how is the world going to be a better place, a different place, a more enhanced place where people have more choice, where people are more free? Very early on, I recognized that I have the ability to be a cult leader. I could have created a cult around me. I really could have. But to me, that is so disgusting. I like to think of myself as a cult buster. About 5 years ago, for shits and giggles, I don't want to get into too many details, I joined a sort of semi-cult just to fuck with them from the inside. And I found what they were doing very distressing because they're very authoritarian. And if you tried to ask questions, they made it about you having a problem rather than stopping and thinking, wait, maybe there's something about our system that's open to improvement or change. So I very much recognized early on that ego trip and the desire for power, that was poison. And I took the road of surrounding myself with people who would call me on my shit. So I've done my very best to create and shape and mold and encourage students who think for themselves. Sure, they're going to use my language patterns, but over time, they really need to think critically about what they're doing. So back when I used to do seminars, I would do things like I'd take a guy who's terrified of women. I would have a female volunteer come on stage and do some change work with him, and maybe within 20 minutes, sometimes less, he'd be over his fear, and he'd be talking to her seductively. It was pretty interesting to watch. And they'd leave and sit down in their seats, respectively, and I'd say to the guys in the audience, now, what's the obvious question? Come on, you guys. And they'd sit there fumbling around. I said, the obvious question is, what's the guarantee? How can we be sure that this is going to last once he gets outside the seminar room? Now, how many of you guys were thinking that? And every hand got raised. I said, you pussies, why didn't you challenge me? I want you to challenge me. My work is rigorous enough to stand up to critical thinking. And so this is very powerful stuff I teach. I recommend that if you're really going to take it on, particularly in the fields of persuasion and influence, that you have at least one person in your life who has some influence over you that can check you and say, nah, you're wandering down a dark road. Because I've seen some very powerful people in the world of self-improvement, self-actualization, who are very dark because they got seduced by their own delusions and their desire for ever-increasing power. Rather than influence and the ability to move people and set them free, they wanted to chain them under the guise of being a guide or a leader.
I can't help but notice you have a very commanding voice. Your voice is interesting.
Tell me more about what happens as you listen to my commanding voice.
It's easy to listen to. It's it cuts through the silence. That it's purposeful. There's no verbal pauses.
Yeah.
And it booms. I'm wondering if that's something that you developed purposely, or is it something that you've always had?
It certainly is something that has an effect on women. I can tell you that people respond to voice tone, and they respond to someone who has a well-modulated voice. So I could speak like this and say, Alistair, as we continue to have this discussion, it's very interesting. So my voice isn't just booming. It also has some prosody to it. It has variety. I know how to use emotional inflection and intonation to make it very, very, and I know when to pause to create response potential. This is something I did cultivate. I used to, if you look at early TV shows of me, I kind of spoke up here, but I learned to cultivate it, and through breathing exercises and some other things. It was a long time ago, Alistair. I frankly don't recall what it is I did.
What are some ways that I could use tonality to improve my communication with clients and with overall everyday relationships?
Sure. So pacing is really important. If you go too fast, if you're in a hurry to get your message out, you're not going to be influencing people on the subconscious, unconscious level. I use the terms interchangeably. It's the same part of the mind. So pausing strategically is really, really important. We have in NLP something called punctuation ambiguity, which simply means the way in which you use your language, the person can't tell where the sentence stops and where it starts. Now, with me, in my communication with people, I always make sure to use punctuation ambiguity, Alistair, in a way where you can now begin to recognize just how powerfully it can be, along with myself. You see, you don't know where one sentence, so it creates a sort of mental leaning forward. It pulls you in. My metaphor is, imagine someone's attention is like a little energetic ball of string in the center of their chest. And once I can pull that out of them and put it on the table, I can play with it. I can create shapes. I can tie them into knots. I can do anything I want. And also the other thing is I'm shaping my state. I'm in control of my state here. I'm so powerful in my message. I believe so much in what I'm saying. I don't have to really get too forceful along with it. I just present it in a way where a person just naturally, easily, readily thinks to yourself, wow, this is really interesting. I've got to have more. Don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool, isn't it?
It is. What is NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming?
Well, there's no easy answer to that question, Alistair. NLP has different definitions depending. There's an old joke about Jewish rabbis. If you ask two rabbis an opinion, you get 50 answers. So actually, if you ask them a question, you get 50 answers. I blew that one. Sorry. For me, NLP is fundamentally a modeling technology. It looks at human excellence, and it breaks out the structure of that excellence, that talent, gets rid of anything that doesn't really belong, that's superfluous, and then teaches that talent to people who don't yet have it. So one of the things I can do is go into a sales team. If you're in sales and you manage a team, you know this. If you have 10 people on your team, the top 3 people are going to be bringing in 80% of the revenue. So I can go into a team use my NLP skills to elicit the strategies and the structure and the beliefs and what they do of the top 3. And then I can train the next 3 to be almost as good as the other 3. So that's an exponential logarithmic increase in a company's revenue. It's a very unique skill set. I think there's plenty of people who teach sales. There's virtually no one who knows how to do that piece of magic. That's why I have egregious fees, and I always get a piece of the change that I create for the company. So if I take a company's revenues in 90 days from 1.5 million to 2 million, I get a piece of that $500,000 change in addition to my upfront fee. So this is very profitable for me, and why I'm turning to AI for the thing with the guys.
Nice. What other ways do you help people? So you help guys get more confident and speak to women, attract women. You help sales teams improve their productivity. What else do you do?
I do healing work. So I'm blessed to have multiple. I'm so in love with NLP and all the doors it's opened for me that I love to do healing work. I like to do work that takes people who are deeply wounded, who are deeply afraid, who have challenges and problems. And in a session, now I'm not a therapist, but in a session or 2, I can create wonderful change. And when clients come to my home, I sit in the same chair. It's a rickety old wooden chair with no armrest, no cushion. It's like a beat up old chair, but I think of it as magic. The humbleness and the humility of that chair is in sharp contrast to the giant size of the change that I create with my clients. And oftentimes one of my cats, NECA, I'm a crazy old cat guy. Yes, I have 2 cats. NECA, I call her trance cat. She'll sit on the client's lap and send them even deeper into trance. So I love the healing aspect of what I do. You know, I had a client who came out to see me, and then he had follow-up sessions, and he had a habit, just a compulsion to smoke marijuana. I don't like to use the word addiction, but he was constantly waking and baking all day long. So I taught him. He was a great trance subject. I got him in trance, and I taught him, guided him, led him to smoke an imaginary bowl. You understand? And now when he wants to get high, he doesn't have to. He just goes into a tiny little self-hypnotic trance, and he smokes that little imaginary bowl. I learned how to do that about 20 years ago. I was sitting at a restaurant with some people, and the waitress was really super attractive. I always tell my buddies, don't tell people I'm a hypnotist, because then they want me to do free change work, and I can't be covert. It freaks them out. But they did. They said, hey, Paul is a hypnotist. And she said, really, can you hypnotize me? I'm thinking, fuck. Well, what do you want? What do you need? Excuse me. What do you need? I bumped the microphone. No. I said, what would you like? She said, I'm a chain smoker. I smoke like 3 packs a day. Wow. I said, well, the reason you smoke so much is you don't enjoy it. She said, what are you talking about? I said, here, take this imaginary cigarette. And she just took it. Her pupils dilated. She took it. I said, now, what if each puff gave you, these lights are making my nose itch. I'm so sorry. What if each puff gave you the most intense orgasms of your life? How many puffs could you take? She went, oh. There were physiological signs that she was aroused. Her face flushed. She went, 3. And I said, great. I came back a month later. She ran over to the table, kissed me on the cheek and hugged me and said, thank you so much. All I need is 2 cigarettes a day, and they're not even real ones. So the moral of that story is, when you're doing work with people, if you are a change worker watching this, always utilize your experiences, even if they're from decades ago. And one of the gifts that I've been given and granted is that I can pull from experiences I've had even when I was very young and use those in my hypnotic work.
Why do you think cannabis and marijuana are becoming so popular these days among a lot of people?
I have no idea. I don't indulge myself. I did when I was a college student, and we had skunk weed. It's basically, you had to pick out the stems. You had to get rid of the stems, get rid of the seeds, or they would crackle and pop while you smoked. I was never really into it. I'm not one for substances. Give me caffeine, right? I don't like alcohol. It puts me to sleep. I like caffeine. I do it in moderation. And I like endorphins rather than adrenaline. I don't know why people do that. I imagine it's a way to self-medicate, to medicate away the loneliness and the isolation and the alienation and the lack of meaning and purpose that people have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something I used to deal with, and I recently got locked into my goals, got locked into my objectives.
Yeah, I see that in your social media.
Yeah, I've been on and it's changed everything. And I used to worry about what vitamins or what diet, but none of that stuff mattered because I was smoking.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of times we know what's holding us back in life, and we just don't want to let go of that thing for whatever reason. And that was my case for me. But now that I let that go and let other things go, I'm just on a different trajectory now. And I hope that for other people too.
Yeah, I saw that in you. And I think oftentimes we don't know what we need to let go of because we're so habitually patterned in it. I like to say when I work with clients, I like to say the big change happens to you not when you're I could change someone's phobia of, say, speaking in public very quickly. That's great, but it's relatively trivial. The big change happens when you're no longer looking through your patterns and beliefs, but you're looking at them. To teach people to cultivate that state of what I call the witness state, the ability to be a compassionate witness to your own patterns and your own suffering. Because we're all suffering. We're all the product of our childhood suffering and our childhood triumphs. Humans are suffering. If you're terrified of women, that woman who's hot and you think is going to slap you down, they almost never do, but that human being still suffers. This is part of my training. I'm not a Buddhist per se, but I have had direct experience of their practices working for me. Whether they work because of the Buddhist explanation, I don't know. But I am a meditator. I do practice metta, which is happiness and good wishes for other people. So I do have a gratitude practice, but what fulfills me more is to be happy for the success of other people, to be grateful for other people being successful. That to me is the completion of gratitude. So one side of the coin is you're happy and grateful for what you have, and the other side of that coin that completes it is practicing blessing people who are further along the path than you are, rather than being poisoned by envy and resentment and entitlement and self-pity. These are the big poisons, not fear. Fear is a poison, but it's obvious. You can overcome it because you can see it. But our personalities, our selves, whatever that means, our spirit, if you want to go there, is so poisoned by those things. Envy, resentment, despair, entitlement, particularly entitlement in this society, that we don't see it. So teaching my clients to purge themselves of that is very, very empowering. If you want at some point, I can not here, but I'll take you through the process.
Okay.
It's part of forming a friendship with you.
That sounds great.
Because you probably have parties with hot chicks where you can introduce me as your disgusting,
no.
Oh, no. Well, just because you're tied to the fence. Just because you're tied to the fence doesn't mean you can't bark at the cars.
It does. It does.
It does?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I luckily have.
Baruch Hashem, young man. Baruch Hashem. Good for you.
I went through my phase and I found a good one. And
good for you.
And I'm very happy. Yeah. And she's a great one.
A woman of valor, as they say in Hebrew. Good for you.
Yeah. I'm curious about something. You mentioned something about how sometimes people or men are suffering from their childhood triumphs.
Trauma.
I heard you say triumph and trauma. No?
I said trauma.
Okay. All right.
I said we're all the product of our adult suffering and our triumphs.
Okay.
And by triumph, I mean what our parents awarded us for, which may actually not be useful or healthy.
That's kind of what I was thinking you might have meant, but maybe it was something else.
That's what I meant.
Okay. So when you're talking to, typically you probably deal mostly in men, young men, right?
No, actually my clientele tends to be, and they're very successful, very successful. The whole image of men being losers, at least not the ones who come to me, are very well to do. They have their own businesses, they built their own careers, they're entrepreneurs, and they're very brilliant. And the whole thing, they almost always say the same thing. I don't get it, Ross. I'm very, very bright. I put myself through law school or medical school or engineering school. I'm at the top of my field. I'm super smart. Why can't I figure out women? And this has not only got them frustrated because they're not getting their emotional needs met, but intellectually they're very puzzled. And so I can come along and untie that knot and tell them, well, the part of your mind that you're trying to figure it out with is not designed to answer that problem. The part of your brain that comes up with a complex mathematical formula is not designed to understand women. There's just some fundamental things to understand and then to move forward from that foundation. And one of the things, I did a debate recently with another big name in the community. I did it on someone's YouTube channel. And I said, look, guys out there, it's very simple to understand women. Women are not more emotional than men. That is a misinterpretation. But men have our emotions in a linear fashion. When we're angry, we're angry. When we're happy, we're happy. When we're sad, we're sad. Women, when we're horny, we're horny. Women have emotions about their emotions. So just because a woman's feeling attracted doesn't mean she's ready to take action on it. She could feel curious about her attraction. She could feel shame about her curiosity about her attraction. They loop their emotions. In general, it's a vast overgeneralization, but you get my point. So it seems like nutty behavior is just a woman having reflective emotions on her primary emotional state. So let her reflect. Create a place where it's okay for her to reflect. And kind of massage it so the interpretation she puts on it is one that leads to the behavior that serves you both, meaning but it's useful for relationships too. You can apply the same skill set.
Yeah. What do you see as some of the biggest things that plague men in general? Things that you work with, people that come to you. Why do they come to you?
There are three big conversational mistakes they make. I have a little free gift I give away called the Conversation Code. If you go to seduction.com, you can get it. There's no cost for it. And we talk about three big mistakes men, even the most successful, brilliant, cued-in guys make in conversations. Number one, they talk about themselves. Yeah. That's why I don't believe in this whole mystery method, DHV, telling stories about yourself. Big turnoff. Maybe it works in a club when there's a group of girls who are half drunk off their asses and you're being entertaining. All right, they talk about themselves. They have fact-based conversations, so they ask fact-based questions like, Debbie, what do you like to do for fun? Well, even if they're genuinely curious, the problem is Debbie's heard that question before, and it just requires a factual answer. How is that going to ignite her fantasy mechanisms, the part of her mind that wants to be seduced? It's not. But what's the difference, Alistair, between saying, what do you like to do for fun? And saying, with genuine curiosity, when you want to do something that makes you feel totally alive and get your heart beating hard and time flies by, what's something you love to do? Or even more importantly, what's something you always fantasized of indulging in, of daring to do, but you haven't yet worked up the nerve? Now, that's a different kind of question.
Yeah, the way you phrased it, it makes me start to think about my feelings. It makes me think about fantasy. It makes me think about my life in a different way.
That's a much more useful place to get to very quickly than having a fact-based conversation. Oh, really? You skydive? How'd you get started with that? You're asking for a narrative rather than evoking emotions and bubbling up the fantasy mechanism. It's just one example. They have fact-based conversations. And finally, they hold interrogations. It's question after question after question with no sharing of themselves in a way that feels reciprocal but doesn't dominate or overtake the entire discussion.
Yeah. I think that could be kind of hard in conversations in general, not just women, but in any kind of relationships where people love to talk about themselves, right?
Correct. So assure that they talk about themselves in a way that evokes the emotional states you want them to evoke.
Right.
So I would not say to you, Alistair, how'd you get started doing your show? I wouldn't do that. Like, it's a history. I'd say, Alistair, when you get really quiet on the inside and you touch that place where you keep your most important truths, the things that really matter to you in your life, and you allow my question to resonate from that place, I would really like to know, at the end of the day, when you look back on a successful day of doing this podcast, what is it that drives you to get up in the morning and do it again with even more fervor, with even more passion?
Am I allowed to answer that question?
Yes. I want you to.
At the end of the day, when I have done my interviews for the day, if I have made a genuine connection with somebody that I can call on for the next 20 years, and I have one or two small nuggets of knowledge that I can pack away in my brain to improve myself 1%, then I've had an amazing, successful day. And that's why I started.
That's a much different answer, and it enables me, it gives me little bits of information that I can pluck out. Mm-hmm. And I know from what you said, forming relationships is really important to you. And so your podcast is a vehicle, a mechanism, a bridge for you to build across to a relationship that would benefit both parties, because you're very reciprocal. You're not transactional. And that's a beautiful thing about yourself. Do you know that about yourself?
I would like to believe that about myself. Yeah. I think as humans, we tend to be self-serving. And so as much as I try to make sure that I am relational, at the end of the day, we all do things that are self-serving.
Of course. I do understand that, but there's a deeper part of you that sees that as a pathway that you're growing towards. Yeah. And I think your partner is helping you grow in that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did I know that? See, I'm getting deeper rapport. You're feeling seen and understood and heard from someone you really don't know. And the scope we've been talking about 35, 40 minutes, maybe 50. But you see how I built that connection with you. You will leave this feeling really understood and seen and heard. And this method of communication is teachable. People say you can't teach social skills. Nah, you can't teach it because that's the limits of your model. When someone says something can't be done, as long as it's not in violation of the known laws of physics, and even there, we're open to learning new things, I say it's possible if you know the magic. Arthur C. Clarke, the guy who wrote 2001 and the inventor of the communication satellite, said one of my most famous quotes that I repeat ad nauseum, which is, any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. And speaking of technology, may I show everyone the AI again?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Learn to get laid.
No, not learn to get laid, get laid. Scan to get laid. So if you want this brain 24/7 guiding you to moist pink heaven, scan this right now. Get your free 7-day trial, instant cancel guarantee, and it's like talking to me when I'm not there.
Let's get it.
Got to be a self-promoter.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious about how these things work with in communication with men as well. We talked a lot about men to women, but I assume a lot of these things are they universal, or do you communicate differently with men?
Absolutely. Maybe not as emotional. I'm not driving for men fantasizing about me. But certainly the principles of being in the right state, of thinking of the states of consciousness you want the person in before you think of the behavior, the skill set of eliciting a conversation and then mirroring back the significant part of the conversation, knowing what to listen for, is as important as knowing what to say. So the person feels that they're seen, they're heard. I don't think it's common for you to have the experience of someone really seeing into you the way I have in front of cameras and hot lights very often. Maybe you have, and if so, bless your heart. So yeah, the skills, you can see from the conversation we've had that the skills are transferable in virtually any context, which is why it's so very important to learn them. If you don't learn them, you're doing yourself a profound disservice. If you learn them, you have an advantage over and an advantage with 99% of the people in the population. I can do things with people who are far more financially successful, women who are better looking. I could beat the pants off the guys who are younger and better looking and wealthier and have higher social status, because when it comes to attracting a woman, because I know how to do this stuff, and the skills are transferable.
Yeah. Well, it's not all about looks, right? Because you look at some of these comedians.
Too
right?
bad, because I would just be kicking ass if that were the case. Can I make my pecs dance for the camera?
I don't know. Can you?
Actually, I've been training. Thank you, Katie. My trainer, Katie, has got me in the best shape of my life. 6 years cooking my meals, training. I still got to get rid of some of this middle tire, but
it's a lot of work. I imagine.
I know. She kicks my ass. I love her.
Shoot, what was I going to say? I was going to ask you about how these type of skills. Oh, hang on 1 second. I wanted to mention that you look at comedians and they seem to have the hottest girlfriends. And comedians...
They're called chuckle fuckers. Can I say fucker?
You can't.
They're called chuckle fuckers. They just like cop fuckers. They like comedians.
Well, I think it has to do also with that they tend to be good communicators, right?
They're also very fucked up and depressed people.
That's true.
From my experience.
A lot of times they're out drinking all night and they're, different types.
You have to put up with tons of rejection. It fucks you up.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. They're called chuckle fuckers. Chubby chasers, chuckle. Whoa, we're politically incorrect. Screw politically incorrect.
That's right.
Political correctness. Yeah. Chuckle fuckers, chubby chasers, mind fuckers, brain fuckers, women who like, they call it sapiosexuals. I'm in like thing with those. If you're a sapiosexual woman and you're liking what you're hearing, and as you stop, take a breath and imagine what it would be like to have all this energy, all this intelligence, all this ability to just touch your special opening on the inside for something new. You might find yourself writing Ross at seduction.com with the subject, "Hey, hot man." Women only, please. The engineer is like covering his mouth and laughing.
Okay. So
I love this. Can you tell I'm very comfortable?
Yeah, this is something you do all the time. I can imagine.
I love it.
Yeah. What if I want to increase my sales? What if I want to make more money? What if I don't care about getting laid?
Okay, so I have a free course. It is, first of all, it's a free digital download of my new book.
Okay.
Get a close-up on that, camera person. The Subconscious Sales Advantage. And it's a 10-minute video training on how to crush objections using hypnotic techniques. Okay. All you have to do is go to paulrossbook.com. And that will lead you down the garden path of maybe eventually being able to apply to work with me. I do only work with people who are doing at least $1 million a year. My fee is pretty egregious, but I get results because what I'm doing is very unconventional. And then usually I negotiate for a piece of the change, the gross change that I create.
Okay. All right. What is it that the biggest challenges you see when you work with a new sales team?
Usually it's the sales. I have a very stringent interview process. I'm not cruel about it, but I only work with leaders who have a certain mindset. Their mindset is, okay, I'm willing to step aside from what I'm used to doing and try on something radically new. If the leader isn't open to it, then I'm not going to be able to enroll the team in the vision if the leader is not open to it. So I don't just screen for the ability to pay. I screen for the kind of personality who's going to get it and who I'll enjoy working with. Does that make sense? Because being a leader requires flexibility and requires some other skill sets. So if you're not flexible, I don't know what I can do. I can make you more flexible if you give me time, and I have a couple hours to do some hypnotic shit with you. But I don't have time. I'm in a place in my career, with all this white hair. I don't have to do that. I don't need to do it. I don't want to do it. People come to me ready because they see there's a solution here you're not going to find with conventional training. So if you've tried everything on the shelf and what you're doing is working, but now you're pushing down harder to get just incremental increases, you don't want 10%. You want it all. As Don Draper, you remember the show Man Band?
I remember, yeah.
You want it all. If you want it all, then I'm the person to apply to work with. But you got to go through channels first. So go to paulrossbook.com.
Okay.
And I love what I do. I love seeing the results that my work gets for people.
So at the end of the day, when you turn off the lights at night, how do you know? How do you know that you've had a fulfilling day and that you are putting good work into this universe?
I know that I've exercised my creativity in ways that have positive impact. I know from the endorphins I feel in my mind, in my body, and rushing through my brain as I recognize that I pushed a boundary. I've gone a little bit further than I thought I could do or I thought I could go. I've made a difference. I've connected with people who I love and who I care about. At the end of the day, for me, it really is about relationships. I am very blessed to have the community of friends that I have built in San Diego. I left LA 9 years ago, and I've never looked back. I'm coming up on my 10th year here, and I've built a community of people who are like my brothers and sisters, who I love like my own flesh and blood. So also knowing that I've spent some time with friends is very fulfilling for me.
So how can people get a hold of you? And what would be, if somebody sees you here, they see that you're a wild and crazy person, or they vibe with you in some way?
I have been told that I'm 150% my wildly crazy, authentic self. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So how would somebody get a hold of you? How would somebody, so they can go to paulrossbook.com.
For the sales side.
For the sales side.
They can go to this. If you're doing at least $1 million a year, and you have that offbeat mindset that says, I'll try something radically new, you can apply to work with me. Just write me, paul@speakerpaulross.com with the subject, I'm interested. And I'll send you back an email. We'll have a conversation. If you're too chicken shit to talk to someone who's a powerful hypnotist because you think, I'm going to take your will away and make you do something, don't bother. But if you're adventurous enough and strong enough in your own will and willing to make a big leap, and are able to abate your fear of me just a little bit, you can apply to work with me. But just go to email me, paul@speakerpaulross.com with the subject line, I'm interested, Paul. And I'll shoot you back an email and a link, and we can talk.
Okay. A couple more questions. So what about people that are married, like me?
Yeah.
What kind of communication skills or things would somebody use to improve their relationships?
I would teach you skills of nonviolent communication, which I've learned from other people, but also just simple phrases like, if you're in a fight with your significant other, is to first of all cool off. To do what they say in dialectical behavior therapy, they have a acronym, REST. Remove yourself from the situation, evaluate, set an intention, take action. So I teach emotional self-regulation. People just don't know how to self-regulate. They don't. So I can teach you to self-regulate, and then to let your partner know that you want to hear them, to say, I really want to hear you. Obviously, what you're saying is deeply important to you, and it's important to me that you know that I want to hear you and that you are heard. And my experience in this moment, and my experience of you in this moment, is that I'm feeling flooded and overwhelmed, and I can't give you what I know you deserve, which is to be heard with all of this coming at me. So I need to step away for 10 minutes. Just step outside. I will be back in exactly 10 minutes. I give you my word. That's very nonviolent communication. Those words, it's my experience of you in this moment. You're not pointing the finger, you're not name calling. When you call someone a bitch or a bastard, you're giving them an identity, a label that they either reject or they buy into, and why would a bastard change? So when you talk about your experience rather than saying you are this or that, it creates space. It creates a window of vulnerability for both of you. In whatever kind of relationship, people want to experience being led and they want to experience power, but they also are craving vulnerability. And they want the other person always to go first. The person who shows vulnerability first is actually the one who has the most influence in the conversation. But you have to do it from a state where you're emotionally well-grounded. And so all these skill sets can be taught. I teach them for corporate leadership because a leader has to know you can have all sorts of communication skills, but if you don't know how to be emotionally grounded and energetically grounded and emotionally well regulated, then all the languaging isn't going to do shit. And what makes me uniquely qualified to teach this is I had to teach these skills to guys who are 30, 40, 50 years old and never been touched by a woman, never had a girlfriend in their life. They were very emotionally dysregulated, particularly when they were thrown into situations where they had to talk to women. So if I could do that with people who are deeply traumatized, I can take you and your team and install or teach these skills or train these skills very, very rapidly.
What about your relationships? What
do you want to know?
I'm curious. Are you seeing somebody?
Not right now, which is why I say to you ladies who are finding me attractive, I'm serious. If you think you can handle me, just say, hey, hot man, to ross@seduction.com. We'll have a conversation.
Do you do
not right now, huh?
Do you do relationships?
Yes, I am a serial monogamist. I am not and never have been promiscuous. As a matter of fact, nowadays, I don't have intercourse with someone for at least 2 or 3 months. I really don't, because I've found when the penis goes in, the crazy comes out. That's just true. Sorry, ladies. And the opposite is true. When the cooch is given up, all the guy's issues come out. So I want to see if they're emotionally regulated. Do they value emotional regulation? What kind of relationship did they have with their dad? Do they come from a happy family? And more importantly, everyone has to get tested, because there are things crawling around inside of parts that science has not yet discovered what to say, have an answer for. And, once both people have been tested and everybody's clean, then I've had a vasectomy, so it's safe to raw dog with me. I'm just being blunt. There's no reason. I'm too old. I'm 65. Strangely enough, it's the younger ladies, like 25, 26, 27, who are more attracted to me. I guess they recognize now that I have experience, and the issue isn't at my age. The issue is, are you hungry enough? Are you adventurous enough to handle the experiences that only someone with my wisdom and my abilities can show you, can lead you through? That's the issue.
Do you recommend that other men kind of follow the same type of pattern as far as waiting a few months? Or
yes, absolutely. This whole thing I originally started with get laid now and immediately and say, that's marketing. No. I also believe that when you have intercourse with someone, it's not just physical. There's energetic stuff going on, even spiritual stuff. You can get people's traumas all over you, their karma. They bring all their childhood crap into it. Sex is very, very powerful, and anything that's powerful has the potential to be dangerous. It just is. And so I no.
It's a powerful tool.
Well, yes, it is. But right now he's sleeping.
What do you want to say? We're almost out of time, but what do you want to say to the men out there? How can they improve their lives? What's your message to them?
My message is there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You've been filled with a lot of bad programming, bad software that just doesn't work. It's not your fault, and you're not alone anymore. This can be handled, and don't let anyone shame you into claiming these skills for yourself. It is your birthright to be able to do this. If you haven't been able to do it, it's not your fault. And there's more than hope. There's answers and there's solutions, and you can find them.
Scan to get laid, guys.
I can't help it. I know how to promote myself, and I love doing it.
All right. I knew this was going to be an amazing episode.
Did you?
And it certainly was. Thank you so much for joining me, Ross.
I loved it.
All right. This was great.
It flew by too fast. Let's do it again.
They always do. They always do, especially with you. Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a great show. Make sure you like, subscribe, communicate with Ross Jeffries, hook up with his book, scan the QR code, put a link in the description as well. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.